A young mother is in jail accused of lying to cover up the abuse of her 2-year-old son at the hands of her boyfriend. I have the details of the sad case out of Madison County, Indiana, with the county's prosecutor. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Katlyn Conrad is a mother to a 2-year-old little boy. And that little boy is fighting for his life in a hospital in Indianapolis. Conrad faces a charge of neglect of a dependent with a serious bodily injury for the injuries the boy suffered. The prosecutor says Conrad's boyfriend, Maverick Peterson, caused the injuries. Police were called to Riley's Children's Hospital on November 19th. The doctors and nurses were treating a 2-year-old boy who had a skull fracture and couldn't open his eyes. Police said in an affidavit that the nurses and doctors told them the boy might not survive, and if he did, he would never, ever be the same. He had bruises all over his body in different states of healing. Other injuries, according to the police, included a right foot bruise and abrasion on the bottom of the foot, a left leg bruise that has what appears to be a pattern injury to it that is consistent with a hand, penile bruising and laceration, right and left knee bruising, right and left arm bruising, left hand bruising, left elbow bruising, left collarbone bruising, lower back bruising, buttocks bruising, occipital erythema, which is swelling and redness of the head, and posterior skull abrasions. And finally, there was left chest bruising. That's a long list of injuries, and it pains me to read that to you. This was a 2-year-old little boy. Police interviewed Katlyn Conrad, and she explained how her son was injured. According to the affidavit, Katlyn stated that she was at work when she received a phone call from her sister and stated that her son and Maverick's daughter were running through the house. The girl, whose name is redacted, bumped into him, causing him to hit his chin on the fish tank and fell backwards. Katlyn was told to go to the hospital due to the boy being transported by ambulance. Maverick is the caregiver to her son while she is at work. Katlyn works from 3 p.m. to midnight. But police say these injuries are not consistent with Katlyn's story. She continued when asked about the other injuries that her son suffered. The affidavit said, Katlyn stated while she was home, her son had hit his head the day prior on the fish tank. This resulted in getting a bump on his head above his right eye. I asked Katlyn about the bruise on his left leg that has a pattern injury consistent with a hand. Katlyn stated it must have happened when Maverick picked him up when he fell. When I asked Katlyn about the other bruising throughout his body, Katlyn stated that her son and Maverick's daughter play rough together. Now, when asked about the injuries to the boy's genital area, she said he picked at it as he slept, and she actually had to buy cream for it. And there was more. The officer wrote, when I asked Katlyn about the bruising on both sides of his hips, Katlyn stated that she must have put the diaper on too tight because he's in pull-ups, but the store was out, so she had to buy diapers. The officer noted in the affidavit that Katlyn was calm and relaxed, not worried. But when police spoke with Maverick, they noted his voice crackled and his hands were shaking. He told a similar story about the boy hitting his head on the fish tank while playing with his daughter. Police said they found Facebook messages between Maverick and Katlyn Conrad from the night in which Maverick discussed the boy getting hurt. This was almost 48 hours before he was taken to the hospital. Maverick said to Katlyn, who was going to work, that the boy had just bonked his head on the fish tank. There's a mark, but nothing worse than what he's had. Katlyn then responded, how the hell? Katlyn then said, I don't understand how he's so clumsy. Maverick then said, they were running side by side and his daughter ran into him. Katlyn responded, well, at least they're playing nicely. A short time later, at 11:58 p.m., Maverick messages Katlyn. His bump on his head is definitely poking out there. Immediately after this was, I'm out of cigs. Katlyn messages Maverick, see if we have any Tylenol you can give him. I'm sure his head hurts. Maverick's response was, yeah, it's worse, meaning definitely worse, than we have seen, and I shouldn't have jinxed it and said that. Katlyn responded with the F word. Maverick then said, he didn't even hit hard. He hit it right, though, apparently. Katlyn then said, well, I guess it's better for it to come out than it was for it to go in. Maverick Peterson's daughter was interviewed and talked about her dad being bad and spanking her with a wooden spoon in very graphic detail. I want to bring in Rodney Cummings. He is the prosecutor of Madison County, Indiana, and he is handling this case. Rodney, first of all, could you tell me if there are any updates on how this little boy is doing?
I've not heard any since yesterday, and the information we received last is the child is still unconscious at a children's hospital in Indianapolis.
Mm. The allegations in this affidavit are just absolutely awful. I mean, this little boy, whose name is not being used because he's a crime victim and he's a minor, suffered horrific abuse. I mean, we're talking burns on the feet, a brain bleed, severe skull fractures. It sounds like he may not survive.
Got multiple skull fractures, bruising throughout his body, lacerations and injuries to his penis. I mean, it is just a classic case of abuse. And, you know, it's so sad when you think about what happens, the kind of the horrors of so many of these children have to experience in our communities. It's, you know, there's no way to explain it. There's no way to understand it.
I want to take a moment to tell you about Morgan & Morgan, which is sponsoring today's Law and Crime YouTube takeover. With the cases I cover here on Crime Fix, you know the world can be very dangerous. And if you are ever hurt, you might need a lawyer. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm, and they can help you. Morgan & Morgan has won some really big verdicts, like $12.2 million in Florida, $26.2 million in Philly, and $6.8 million in New York. All of those were significantly higher than the highest insurance company offer. There are no upfront fees. You only pay Morgan & Morgan if you win, so give it a try. You can submit a claim in 8 clicks or less. Just log on to www.forthepeople.com/YouTube takeover. It was noted in the affidavit that mom, Katlyn Conrad, was very calm and relaxed as she's telling her story, being interviewed by law enforcement, but that Maverick Peterson, who's accused of causing the abuse, of abusing the child, his voice was cracking, his hands were shaking, he was very nervous. And I mean, a very marked difference in the reaction to being questioned by law enforcement. Do we think mom believed him, or do we think she was just simply covering for him? What do you think? I mean, I don't know how she couldn't have noticed the injuries to her child.
She did. This isn't like this just started on this day. This abuse has been going on for some time. And it's pretty clear from the investigation that she was more concerned about protecting her boyfriend than she was about protecting her child. She provided false information. She deleted photographs from her telephone, anything that, I mean, she said she was there when the first incident occurred the day before, what they call the first incident. I can't imagine it was, but she said she was in the home. She wasn't. She's just trying to provide cover for her boyfriend, not wanting him to be arrested or held accountable for his behavior. And that's the primary reason why she was charged as well.
Right now, they're facing a charge of neglect of a dependent causing serious bodily injury. We always know that charges can be added. The investigation, I assume, is ongoing.
Yes, it is. And a lot of that is we're removing with the medical information. I mean, they have, you know, we have a high-tech crime unit that will go through the telephones and get all the information and text messages and things out of there. We may get more information from that, but I think primarily it's the level of injury to this child that will affect what the ultimate charges will be filed. Right now, it's for Maverick, it's neglect of a dependent resulting in serious bodily injury, and then obstruction of justice on having somebody come over to the house and remove all the drug paraphernalia out of the house. Mm-hmm. The mother charged with the level 1 neglect of a dependent, primarily because she was more concerned about protecting her boyfriend than she was about protecting her child, which is something I can't understand. I mean, it seems to go against the nature of what women have, you know, the protection they should have for their children. I don't understand it, and I see it regularly. They're more concerned about trying to protect these guys that aren't worthy of their effort.
It's just unbelievable to me. And we do see that, I mean, covering these cases as well. And it's absolutely awful. One thing that struck me in the affidavit as well, and reading through it, was the fact that Maverick Peterson's daughter, who they were saying ran into and was playing with the little boy, and this is what caused the injury. He's running into the fish tank, and then, oh, they bumped into each other and they did this and all of this. But she was interviewed. There was a forensic interview done of her, and she talked about what happened or what she witnessed, but also talked about her dad being bad, and that her dad had busted, these are her words, this is a little girl saying, he busted my ass. I mean, I can't even imagine a little girl saying something like this, but it shows you maybe the environment she's living in, with a wooden spoon.
Yeah. That's the language. So, she's repeating what she hears in that home regularly. He's probably, you want me to bust your ass? You know, it's that kind of thing. And that's the language that these children grow up in. That's sad in itself as well.
That's the little girl, the forensic interviewers, it sounds like she said some things according to the affidavit, where it sounded like she was saying that Maverick pushed the boy.
I think the way I saw what was happening, my interpretation was that she was being interviewed. She said some things that were not in favor of her father, and I think she kind of backed off a little bit. Once she said it, it's like she realized what she was saying. She didn't want to get in trouble for saying those things and kind of backed off a little bit. But it's pretty clear that she initially said that her father was abusing this child.
There was also some information in there from people who were interviewed who said that Maverick Peterson had anger issues. So this is somebody, according to the investigation at least, who was being left with a 2-year-old little boy for hours on end in the overnight hours, or late at night, and then something was going on. So that just goes to show you how important it is to ensure you're surrounding your children with people who are good people and who can handle children.
If the mother had upheld her obligation to this child, he wouldn't have been left alone with her ever under any circumstances. I mean, it's not only did she have to know what was going on, then once she was aware of it, she tried to protect him. So, you know, it seems this poor child was doomed from the beginning.
How do you know how the biological father of the little boy is doing right now? I saw that he was interviewed as part of the investigation as well.
Yeah, I'm not aware. I think he had limited contact with this child in the months that moved forward. His explanation was that he wasn't paying child support, so she wouldn't let him see the child. So I'm sure he's devastated by what's happened, but, you know, he wasn't even in a position where he could have seen what was happening. I mean, had he had visitation more or seen the child more, he might have been aware of these injuries and reported to the police. And maybe we are not in this circumstance. But, you know, some of us don't push for rights as much as we should. And sometimes, you know, you don't understand what you can do. You don't have the resources to do that. I mean, he was entitled to see this child regardless of whether or not he was paying child support. That is a separate issue, and he could be held accountable for that as well. But that shouldn't limit his opportunity to see his child.
So as far as the investigation goes, you'll be monitoring the little boy's condition, seeing if he does improve. And again, the nurses and doctors have said if he does pull through and if he does survive, he'll never be the same because of the damage his brain has suffered.
Highly unlikely. I think the only thing that would change the direction of our prosecution is if the child dies. I mean, there aren't more serious offenses that this individual can be held accountable for unless the death of the child occurs. And we hope that does not happen. We certainly hope that doesn't happen. But as far as the investigation moving, the charges that we have are the ones that are appropriate for what has happened to this child, unless hopefully this child survives. But if not, then that could enhance the penalties for this individual.
Just so sad. It's so sad. Well, Rodney Cummings, any final thoughts?
No, just please protect your kids. Any relationship you have should be secondary to protecting your children. I mean, I just don't understand why that's a conversation we need to have. But protect your kids. Please protect your kids.
No doubt. Thank you so much, Rodney Cummings, Madison County Prosecutor, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.